Hello, it's Heidi Fisher here, and it's the Social Enterprise Online Festival. And today I'm joined by Adrian Ashton, who's going to be talking to us about why people get confused about legal structures. But first of all, Adrian, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, please?
Okay, sure. So I've been kind of freelancing now, I guess, for about 13 years, following Misadventure. And prior to that, read business at a university in Cambridge for 5 years. Realised in the years that followed that there were only two things of any actual direct relevance and practical use in the worlds of business and enterprise, one of which was a drinking rhyme that I taught myself.
However, to share that.
That'll be the kind of the thing that it means that if people get in touch with me personally, I'll share it with you. I can't give everything away, obviously, in the webinar. So following that, took on a number of roles in different sectors and marketplaces over the years. Ended up getting headhunted to head up a specialist cooperative and social enterprise support agency. And while I was there, got involved in all sorts of weird and wonderful things, including the dawn of what's now become the renaissance in social impact reporting around the country, doing work with national bodies around legal forms and governance structures for different types of social enterprise, which we'll come back to in a few moments. Lots of stuff around financial modelling. And then, like I say, about 13 years ago, through mishap, fell into freelancing. And then through that, have discovered that I have quite a range of things that people enjoy my doing with them, some of which is around governance, which is not the same as legal forms, some of which is around finance, so looking at different types and flavours of money, how do we know which is the right one to go for, how do we best look after them, looking about impact reporting, so some of the different options and approaches and why social return on investment is possibly the most dangerous and time-wasting model of reporting of impact. But again, I'll let you know why if you want to get in touch with me separate to that. I've got a lot of evidence and research and statements.
I might disagree with you on that one because I do quite a lot of social return and investment reports. So maybe I'll get in touch with you to have a discussion about that as well.
As a model and a framework, it has a lot of benefits. My concern is that in the main, a lot of national sector bodies are pushing it for reasons that don't stack up or work out in the real world. The main benefit you get from social return on investment isn't what people are being told you do.
True.
By the powers that be. So I do stuff around that. Also fallen into doing things around growth as well. So different models of how social enterprises can scale their impact and their size. Mergers and acquisitions, partnerships, collaborations, social franchising, all the stuff across there. And then from time to time as well, I also get involved in responding to consultations in terms of national policy. I accidentally changed some legislation that governed the community interest company model a few years back. And I get asked also to work with various national bodies around policy that affect enterprise support for all different types of enterprise. So it's a bit of everything, really. It's a real mixed bag. What it all ultimately comes down to, I think, is enterprise support and development. Mm-hmm. And that's enterprise as defined by what if and why not enterprise, let's go out and make a shed load of money and not care about how we do that.
Okay, brilliant.
I also, just to add in terms of something that makes me a bit unusual within this, I have various unusual business practices, one of which is that, to my knowledge, I'm still the only freelance consultant globally to annually publish a social impact report on myself, and have done for the last 12 years. And I say to my knowledge because I'm still looking for someone else I can swap notes with. So as soon as
I may do one, but you know, I'm too busy doing other people's at the moment. Yeah, I was going to say some of your unusual business practices. I've seen quite a few things that you posted on LinkedIn where you look like you're doing like comedy acts or comedy shows more of the time. So
yeah, I do draw a lot on stand up in terms of some of the approaches I take. And there's a national festival for micro enterprises every year, Microbiz Matters Day, middle of January every year. Last year, I was invited to be one of the keynotes within it. And there's a tradition of hats. So I did the whole day and the festival wearing a fez.
Fair enough. So we can expect lots of entertainment through you around legal structures. It won't be a boring interview, I'm hoping, today.
Hopefully not, no. Well, so far, whenever I've done anything about legal structures, no one's fallen asleep and no one's ears have started bleeding either, which I take to be a good sign.
Which is definitely a very good sign. So I suppose, given the title of your interview is why people get confused about legal structures, the first question has to be, well, why do they get confused? What do you think the problems are?
Okay, so I think firstly, just to kind of hopefully reassure people, this isn't going to be me going through all of the legal forms and options for social enterprises and social entrepreneurs. I think there's enough. I've given the other webcasts, podcasts, guides, materials out there to do that. The reason I was very interested and excited and wanted to volunteer my time to do this one today is to clarify some of this confusion that people bring with them. Because I think if we understand why there's a problem, we can fix it better. If we know why we get confused, we can cut through it and make better informed decisions and choices about our enterprises. So some of the reasons I think, so there's probably about 5 principal reasons why we've got this confusion. And some people go, oh, you're a social entrepreneur, you must be this, or all social enterprises are that, but what about this? And around it goes. So 5 reasons, and in no particular order. There is confusion around different legal forms for social entrepreneurs because there are lots of different players in this space. Let's talk about initially about investors, people with money. I am a social venture capitalist. I am a social investor. I am a grant making trust. I'm wanting to put money, invest money in your social enterprise in order for you to do better things, but also that I can get my money back in some way, shape or form in the future. As a result, I have some ideas about how I'd like to see you work. And I also have some concerns about losing my money if things start to go wrong. You as the entrepreneur are also concerned that if things start to go wrong, you won't lose the shirt off your back. You'll be able to at least still have some money to live off, and you won't be kind of thrown out on the street, lose everything you have. So there is this thing that a lot of investors, social investors as well as private individuals, place their own stipulations and criterion on what should you be to be a social enterprise. A good example of this will be a few years ago when I worked with a client who kept winning lots of local and regional awards for being best social enterprise. They had money from their local Department of Health, so the clinical commissioning groups as they are now, seed corn, to develop and pilot some new services. They worked with some national charities in terms of developing and piloting and pioneering new services as a social enterprise. And then they went to a social investor, a social lender, did a lot of work with them about putting in an application for a loan, a social loan, to help scale the business, take it to the next level. I spent quite a few months on this with the loan officer, spending time investing in the proposal, working it up. And then at the very last moment, the social lender came back and said, oh, we're sorry, we can't now consider your application for an investment because you're not a social enterprise. That was it. And so I made some inquiries, and it turns out that this social lender, because of how they were set up, can only recognize you as being a legitimate social enterprise if you're one of 3 legal forms. That's it. If you're not one of these 3 specific legal forms, this social lender cannot recognize you as a social enterprise. Even if the government does, even if sector bodies do, even if grant-making trusts do, even if everyone else in the world does. So we've got this confusion about different people with money have a different interest in terms of who they think you should be and what they think you should be.
And in terms of, if you did come across that, let's say you knew you potentially wanted to get a contract from somewhere or some investment or funding, and they specified a particular legal structure, would you say to people, well, pick that legal structure, or would you ask?
No. I would never say pick your legal structure on the basis of what someone else says you should be, or someone else wants you to be, because it's not their name on it, it's yours. When we set up a legal form, we sign our name. We are taking a legal responsibility for it. And if it goes wrong, it's our name that it comes back to. A funder, a commissioner, a grant-making body, a consultant or an advisor doesn't go back to them, it goes back to you. So you need to make sure you feel this is the best legal form for you and you understand why. And I've worked with some clients where they've gone back to commissioners who've said, oh, we can only give you a contract, we can only recognise you as a social enterprise if you are a community interest company. Mm-hmm. So I've worked with the client and they've been able to go back to those commissioners and say, we get why you think that, but actually here is how our legal form here makes us more of a social enterprise than a community interest company can ever make us be. I'm putting it that way. So it's about taking control back of your enterprise on your terms.
Okay, good.
So that's number one in terms of how we do it.
Brilliant.
Number two, the reason why there's all this confusion, we get bored. I think politically, socially, we're always looking for the next big thing. We're always looking for what comes and what can we do now. Back in the 1960s, 1970s, early 1980s, communities were in trouble. Local economies weren't working, local jobs weren't happening. So we saw the rise of cooperatives, community entrepreneurs, collective entrepreneurship. We then hit the 80s, the rise of consumerism, the me first generation. All of a sudden, collectivism, working together for each other's mutual benefit, no, that's out the window. We have the heroic entrepreneur emerges, the social entrepreneur. I will fix all of these problems by myself. Now, in doing that, the legal forms that worked for my parents and their peers and the generation before, that's not right for me. I need something new. And we see the same with, if any of you have kids, it's the same for our kids. They know best. It doesn't matter the number of years of lived experience we've had, the number of mistakes we've made, how we've screwed it up and brought it back. They don't listen to that. They don't believe it. They need to do it a new way for themselves. They are making their own way in the world. So therefore they said, we need a new way of doing it. You know, it worked for you, Dad, it worked for you, Granddad, but we're not you. We are our own new people. We need a new way of doing it. And so rather than say, let's recognize and respect and work with what we know works and is proven to work, let's start something new, a whole new model of doing it. A good example of this has been the rise of the B Corp here in the UK. As if we think of social enterprise as a kind of a family, we had sort of about 10, 15 years ago, the community interest company started being talked about as a way to encourage social entrepreneurs to help get into the marketplace, to bring about change to a new legal model. And then a few years ago, we started to hear some rumblings amongst some people in the movement who said, well, actually, kicks aren't going far enough. They're not having the huge transformative impact and effect we thought they would. There's still a place for them. There's still a role for them. But we now need something new again. So the likes of Social Enterprise UK and others cast around and said, oh, there's this thing in America called the B Corp. Let's see if we can bring it over here to the UK. And we've now got the B Corp, which is not a legal form. It's a quality management standard, a bit like the social enterprise mark. But again, in America, it's a legal form. In the UK, it's a standard. So we've got this idea about the different communities, different sectors saying we need a new approach. The fetish of innovation. If it's working, why do we need something new to fix it? Absolutely. Go back, question assumptions. Absolutely. Don't assume that just because it worked before, it's still the best thing. But don't change it for the sake of changing it unless there's a real need. So that's the reason number two. We're always looking for the next new big thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Number three. Okay, this is the one that, depending on who's in the audience, it may get me in... actually, no, number four will get me in the most trouble. Number three is pretty straightforward. Number three is about protecting the public interest. So we have a government, and the role of government is to protect public interests in the widest possible sense. Now, recently, what we started to see is the introduction of tax returns and tax reliefs for social enterprises. After many years of lobbying and campaigning and advocacy from financial bodies, financial intermediaries, financial advisors like yourself, Heidi, that's finally happening. We're seeing social investment tax relief in the same way that private companies can get tax relief on investment as well, which is fantastic. The challenge with that is government says, okay, we want to make sure this works properly. We're setting it up. The public, you and me, Joe and Josephine Blogg on the streets, are going to go and invest our cash in a social enterprise, and we're going to get some kind of return for that. So the public transactions. The government says, well, that needs protecting. because you're the public, you're dealing with a private business, there needs to be somewhere within that a layer of protection and regulation. So within the tax relief system, so if I'm investing in social enterprises to get a return, or using my own money as a member of the public, the government says we need a way to make sure that the public is protected. And what that has meant, and how it's worked out, is to say that means that there are certain types of social enterprise legal forms that can work with, but not all of them, because of the way that tax laws work in the UK. And if you're confused about how tax laws work, then ask someone to explain why all companies have 3 financial statements: a cash flow, a profit and loss account, and a balance sheet. And on all 3 of them, the bottom number can be different in terms of what your business is worth, and yet all 3 of them are right, because that's how tax law works. It's the same reason we have 4 rates of VAT. VAT is 20%. No, that's one of them. We have 3 other VAT rates. It's bonkers financial system.
I think
that impacts on our legal forms, because the legal form we adopt changes the way that we engage with the tax system and the financial system, which the government set up to protect public interest, and ended up confusing us even more. That's number 3. Number 4, so like I said, this is the one that's possibly going to get me in the most trouble. The reason why there's a lot of confusion about social enterprise legal forms, because of government policymakers. People who sit in ivory Whitehall towers, saying we think we know best, saying let's kind of come up with a new idea that we think will work well. So I have an idea based on policy documents I've read, interviews I've heard, and things I've read. The community interest company legal form was created as a response to a government policy strategy from 2001, which described it might be useful if social entrepreneurs had a legal form that allowed them to exhibit certain characteristics, or them to be protected and recognised publicly. Okay, that's fine, that's great. Unfortunately, an inconvenient truth about that is all of those characteristics, in terms of if we kind of pair them back, it means this, it means that. We've been able to do that within any company form since 1986, and have Companies House enforce it and manage it. So with policymakers said we need something new, so they've gone back and they've rebadged something that was already there. So a lot of everything a KIC has, you can actually put into a regular company, and not have 2 regulators, only 1, and not have to do 2 lots of reporting, just 1. But because of government policymakers, because of the way the tax system works, you may then find that precludes you from certain financial systems and opportunities around tax relief, for example. So there's huge confusion about policymakers, and this is nothing new, okay? This is nothing new, because we go back 160 years or so, see the rise of the modern cooperative movement here in the UK. Modern cooperative societies started to be formed, and what they were finding was the early ones, things started to go wrong. Members had people from the public who invested their money, became the members, shareholders. Management ran off with the money. They went bust. There was no way that the legal forms of the day allowed them to protect their defining values and principles. So the sector lobbied government, and government introduced industrial and provident tax legislation, which became the de facto norm for recognising a cooperative. Brilliant. But then, of course, we go back to some of my earlier points. Different communities then say, well, actually, we think we can be a cooperative, but in a different model. So instead of a consumer cooperative, we'll be a worker cooperative. We'll be a consortium cooperative. We'll be a housing cooperative. And those then spiral out more things, which means government policymakers get lobbied and a new legal form comes out again. Okay, if you're not confused so far, I've still got more to go. So, crikey. Okay, and here's another interesting thing about the confusion about legal forms as well. And again, this is the one that may mean that Heidi accidentally presses the button and cuts me off mid-flow, because it's to do with accountants.
Ooh.
And
I'm not a practicing accountant any longer, so you're allowed to get away with this. So
one of the things that I see from time to time, and all of you have this as entrepreneurs, okay? Where do most entrepreneurs go for advice about their business and how they manage it? Most will say, we have an accountant, and we ask the accountant. And they say, okay, on the basis that they're an accountant, they must know what they're doing, so we'll do what they suggest. and we'll follow their direction in terms of how we prepare our accounts, how we structure ourselves around that. And some, and many businesses, even across all sectors, will go to their accountant and say, we need to incorporate. What's the best way for us to do this? And accountants are like the rest of us. We draw on our own knowledge and experience and insight. And within that, we're all prejudiced and biased. Okay, we all have our own favourites. We all have things we don't like. Hopefully, though, what we can do is we can recognise that. And when we're giving advice, we're giving support, we can say to people, we think this because of these things. And then you can decide whether you're paying attention to my view or not. Okay, you make a better informed decision. That's what I'm concerned about in this. Accountants, though, my experience with many clients in social enterprise land tend to say, we think that's right, that'll be fine, go off and do that. And they advise social entrepreneurs to adopt legal forms that aren't necessarily the best ones for them.
Mm. And yeah, there is a big issue with social enterprise and accountancy, and a general lack of understanding around it, and trying to almost push social entrepreneurs into having a standard limited company and doing it for profit because of the tax efficiencies in terms of dividends. That tends to be the biggest issue that most people come across with accountants that haven't worked with social enterprises.
Absolutely. And then we have that confusion because we then got national sector bodies, people like Unlimited, the Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs, who've just published, so we're in the sort of the end of the summer 2017, if you're watching this in the future. Unlimited, the Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs, have recently published a piece of some research work about using private limited companies, privately owned companies, as vehicles for social entrepreneurs to create social change. And their research suggests, and I would say, I'm not saying this is, I'm not saying it isn't, I'm saying look at the research, test the assumptions, look at how many people they asked, maybe there's that. But their research suggests that if you are a private company, privately owned, limited by shares, using those tax efficient dividend schemes and such like, their research suggests you will grow faster and quicker and bigger and be more successful than if you didn't, than if you are a traditional company limited by guarantee, whether that's with a kick status on the top or not. Now, again, we get that. We get Social Enterprise UK now saying the B Corp's the next big thing. Doesn't matter what your legal form is, get the B Corp on top of it, you'll be great. We then get Social Firms England, saying, well, we've got the Social Firm Star, and we think, actually, it doesn't matter what your legal form is, as long as you get our quality standard. And so it goes. Everyone's got an agenda and an angle. And you, the entrepreneur, are just in the middle like a rabbit in the headlights going, what do I do? What do I do? You're saying that, I'm hearing this, but I'm worried about that. What am I supposed to do? Ask a question. That's the answer. There's all this confusion. And the other thing, maybe the biggest reason why there is all of this confusion. So it's not just about different investors' agendas, whether they be social lenders or whether they be grant-making trusts. It's not just about the fact that we always, as the next generation, we always want the next big thing because we are making our own mark in the world. That's the way our parents did it. Well, we're not our parents. And that's reasonable. It's not about how government's trying to protect public interest. It's not just about government policymakers changing their mind every so often about, well, maybe this now, maybe that. And it's not just about because of how different accountants and professional support providers work according to their own prejudices and bias because of their own knowledge and interest. Part of it is because when we look at the list, if you look at the full list of the number of options we have in the UK territories to incorporate an organisation within, we have 16 different legally recognised identities and options that an organisation can adopt.
That's a lot.
I can make sense of them somehow. My brain's wired funny, okay? I can sit down and if you give me an hour or two, I can go through them all and explain them in plain English. And this is not the place and time for that, though, okay? There are other podcasts on YouTube and books and great guides out there. My concern is how you navigate through them with all of these different competing voices going through. Now, to that end, I have an idea that one of the tenets, one of the adages that a lot of people will say is form follows function. Okay, work out what you want to do first and how you want to do it, and then pick the system that works best for you to do that with. And there's different ways you can approach doing that. And one of the things that I've been working on in my own head for about 15 years now, so it changes every so often, but one of the possibly only 3 original ideas I ever claim to have had in my own life so far is the framework for how you can do this. And it's called CHAMP, C-H-A-M-P. And my idea is this: if you can answer what each of the letters CHAMP, each of the C-H-A-M-P are for you, your preferred model within this, your ideal now and in the future, when you then look at all those 16 options and the detail of how they work and how the money flows within them or not, you can make a better informed choice. And you can say to anyone, we chose to be a kick because that allows us to do this. A charity wouldn't. We chose to be a cooperative society because that allows us to do this, and a company limited by guarantee wouldn't. Okay, so we do it that way. So the 5 letters, here we go, the big build up. C, credibility. Whom is it we know we need to impress the socks off? And we know for us to get out, okay? That could be a commissioner, it could be local partner organisations, it could be our mum. It's your enterprise, okay? You and whoever is involved. So who is it, who are your critical audiences you need to impress? So the C for credibility. When you know who they are, go and research them a bit. Find out what do they think they know about legal forms and social enterprise. Because a lot of my experience is a lot of commissioners in the health sector and in criminal justice have this idea, for whatever, well, rightly or wrongly, but they have this idea that a community interest company is the ideal form for social enterprise. So if you are a community interest company, a kick of any of the 3 types, there are 3 types of kick, any of the 3 types, you'll get your foot in the door a little quicker and easier. Doesn't guarantee the contract or the funding or the partnership, but it gets your foot in the door a lot quicker and easier. Okay, so credibility. H is for history. Okay, in years to come, when small children sit around campfires and sing songs about your social enterprise, when other people are out there at networking events, passing you and the name of your enterprise comes up, what's the story that you want them to be telling? Okay, because the legal form we adopt affects our governance, affects our funding, affects the way that we can run services and activities now and in the future. Our responsiveness, our culture, our values, okay? What's the story you want people to be telling about you? CH. A, accountability. Now this, I think, is the big deficit we have in social enterprise sector. Accountability. Whom do we wish to be held accountable to, and on what terms? Who is going to hold us true to our colours? So we said we're going to set out to do this. Who are the people we want to go to say, these are the people we go back to every 6 months, every year, whatever it is, to revalidate us, to say, yeah, you're not losing the plot just yet. Carry on. Okay. Without that, we can very easily start believing our own hype. We can start to lose the plot. We can make poorly informed decisions, and we end up becoming a bad egg generally around before we realise it. Now, that accountability could be to a local community. It could be to partner organisations. It could be to the greater good, the wider sector. It might be that we want accountability based on relationships, in which case stakeholder forums, wider membership of the enterprise. It may be that actually because of our services, we want to have much more of a high rigor of trust. So we want a legal accountability. We want an accountability based on enforced legislation. So I've worked with KICs out there in the past who say the reason we want to become KICs is because the KIC regulator is more powerful than any other regulator, including the FCA, who look after the banks, in terms of the extent of those KICs' powers. And the reason we want that is not because we're scared we're going to get it wrong. So when we talk to our audiences, when we talk to our partners, and they say, but how do we know you're really all that? How do we know you're not going to pull a fast one in the future? And they can say, well, did you know that if we do, this regulator can do this, this, and this to us? And that ain't pretty. And then all those organisations go, oh, really? They can do, oh, in which case you're definitely not going to screw up, are you? You're definitely going to keep your nose clean, Sonny, and here's the contract, here's the grant, here's the money, carry on. So they use it as a way to build relationships and trust that way. But accountability, really important. CHA. M. Okay, now if there's any of you in the audience with kids, or maybe of a certain age, you will be familiar with a cartoon show called SpongeBob SquarePants. And one of the best characters in SpongeBob SquarePants is Mr. Krabs, because Mr. Krabs loves money, 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 money. Okay, all about the money. In your enterprise, let's talk about the money. What type of money do you want to raise to start it up? What type of money do you think is going to be the best type of money to grow it in the future, to support the cash flow and the working capital? How do you feel about debt? How do you feel about equity? How do you feel about grants? Okay, grants, by the way, although this is not about finance, grants, I have this idea and I'm willing to argue this and evidence it. Grants are the riskiest form of finance out there for any group or enterprise. And they're also the type of finance which is most frequently badly reported and managed in accounts when it comes to it. Okay? And again, we'll argue that one later if we need to.
Yeah.
The money. But again, because the type of legal form you adopt impacts upon the way you can raise money. So we hear lots of people talking about community shares at the moment. Community share issue, this should be great, this should be that. Crowdfunding equity, brilliant, brilliant. It's nothing new. We've been doing it for a couple of centuries now. It's just that the internet means we can make it shinier and sexier. But you can only do a community share if you are a community cooperative society, one legal form. Okay, you can do a much more limited community share issue as a KIC limited by shares, but it's much narrower, much smaller. You can't get the same reach, impact, scale, but it's there as an option, just depending how you want to do the money. And P, this is about power. Okay, this is not the kind of the old Top Gear Grand Tour, Jeremy Clarkson, put your foot down, power, power, more speed, more power. This is about authority and control. Who has the power in your enterprise? Who should have it? What's the basis on which they get it? How do they wield it? How far does it go? Who keeps them in check around that? Okay, all that kind of stuff. Now, see if you work that out. So if you're my client and I'll say to you, let's talk about CHAMP. Credibility, history, accountability, money, and power. You work out your ideal scenarios for your enterprise against those 5 themes, and I can very easily and quickly show you and explain to you which is the best legal form that allows you to design and hold your enterprise around that. And also, more importantly, perhaps, why other legal forms aren't. Because you're going to have all sorts of pressure on you from all sorts of people, as Heidi's sort of highlighted there at the start. Lots of people come and go, oh, well, if only you're this, we'll give you the contract. And people go, well, maybe we'll change it. Well, it doesn't have to.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that does come up is about what if we get the wrong legal structure? But it's where, you can change it. But I think
good news, yeah.
What you've just been through is a guide as to how to get it right so that it still works in 6 months, 6 years, 60 years from now, as opposed to having something that's very short-termist. So that's really helpful.
Thank you. Okay. So there's all that stuff. Now I think there was something else we were supposed to cover as part of this this interview. It feels a bit like I'm at a Hollywood Oscar night. I can't be there with you in person to accept my award, but
yeah. So the final thing that there's a couple of things that I want to ask you. One is around when people are looking at legal structures, as well as confusion. There's also often quite a lot of fear because it can be one of the first steps they're taking on their journey to being a social enterprise. And it can block them from making a decision about a legal structure. How do you go about helping or assisting people with actually getting to the point where they finally decide what legal structure they're going to have, rather than perhaps going through the process saying, yes, I'm going to be this, and then not doing anything, 2 months later coming back and saying, oh, well, I've just talked to somebody and they've said have this legal structure, and they just switch between them and never actually get around to setting up.
I've got a client this is happening with at the moment. So 4 months ago, I started working with them on what seemed to be a pretty straightforward ask. So they said, we're currently a local group, we're trying to reduce risk, so we need to incorporate. There's certain things we want to achieve through this, and here's where we're at and all the rest. And our current thinking is a charity, one of the 3, okay, get this, there are 3 legal forms of charity in the UK. 3, good grief. Well, we have 3 different charity regulators as well, okay? Possibly a 4th one on the way, but 3 legal charity forms and 3 regulators, depending, So they thought we'd be a charity. So we had a chat with them, worked through and said, well, actually, over the course of a few conversations and me doing some research on the Commission's, Charity Commission's website, and having some conversations with the commissioners on their behalf, it became apparent a charity wasn't right for them, because the objects, the purposes they wanted to have could not be recognised as wholly and exclusively charitable in law, so which means you can't be a charity without ditching one of them. So I gave an option. So, look, you can do this if you ditch this third of your core identity, which everyone who is part of it at the moment signed up to. You have to go back and tell them you're going to be a different thing. If you want to access some of those benefits, here are some of the strategies and options we can work with, you can create to pursue those benefits. Okay, so they went away, had a chat. Great, decided that they were going to do a different legal form instead. So I've helped them draft up all the paperwork, and we got that in place. And then one of the key people within the group, who's been off on leave for 4 months, has now come back yesterday and said, oh, I wonder where everything's at. And oh, we're not being a charity now, but I thought we were supposed to be. And I've had this big long email from them saying, why aren't we a charity? We should be a charity. So I'm now having to do this very polite email back to say, actually, I've had all these conversations with your colleagues and your steering group, and they've all said they want to be this now. Now, in between the lines, maybe you want to chat with them a bit more, but let's have a phone call about this to see what we do. And it's absolutely fine to change your mind, okay, in terms of as you go through the process, because things change. The trick is, at some point, you have to make a commitment. You have to say, we're going to do this, rightly or wrongly. We will never be in a position to have complete knowledge and understanding about how everyone else is going to do stuff and respond. Sometimes it's got to we have to make the best choice we feel we can on the decision we've got and the information we've got at the time. Maybe that in the future we say, well, that was a mistake. Okay, well, how do we change it? Within some legal forms, we can change stuff because we change the governing rules within them. The articles, the constitution, the rules, whatever they are according to the legal form. And that's fine. Sometimes it's a case of saying, well, actually, we need to set up a subsidiary company because we can't, maybe we're a charity and we now want to do this and we can't as a charity, so we'll do a subsidiary. That's fine. Maybe we set up a partner company. Maybe we spin something out. Maybe we transform. Maybe we say, well, we started as a charity, but that's not right. But rather than a subsidiary, we'll do a whole-scale transformation. And there is a process agreed between the Charity Commission and the KIC regulator that says you start over here as a charity, and then you slowly through a process of forms and meetings and signatures become a KIC. And it's great. And you can go backwards that way as well. Now, and again, all of this is to do with forms and signatures and filing. Sometimes though, depending on what you are and what you want to change to, you can't do that transference. You have to set the new thing up and then transfer everything across. And that becomes a new entity in its own right. Doesn't have all of the history of this one on paper. So try and get it right. Now, what I always say to people though, in terms of, they say, well, I need to make a decision now. My question is why? What's the rush? Why do you need a decision now? And people may say, well, because we're bidding for this contract, we've got to put on it what we are. Or we're bidding for this grant, we're going to put in what? So, well, think about, let's put this in another context. If you were looking to buy a house, would you wait until you found the right house and then start applying for the mortgage? No. What we do is we go to the mortgage companies first and we say, let's just put this in, see where it goes. And then we look at the houses and then the two kind of line up between them. So if it's a case that you're putting in a request for funding or a contract or something and they say, this is what we need, then until they award you the contract, you don't need the legal form in place. So on that bit of the form, just write on, we are currently in the process of incorporating. And then when they give you the contract, they'll make it a condition. They'll say, well, we won't give you the contract or transfer the money until that's in place. It buys you more breathing space and time. Okay? That's the way they do it. The other option is the kind of the lazy cheats route. And this is what I've worked out over the years, which is if you are, for whatever reason, there is no other option, you have to incorporate with some kind of legal form. And you're not entirely sure you've got the right form, but you need something quick, you need something flexible, a company limited by guarantee. And that's because a company limited by guarantee, out of all of the options, is probably the quickest, cheapest, and easiest to register because it's a registration process. The KICs, charities, societies, they're all application. They can take months to go through. Companies, it's a straightforward registration. Get the forms in the right order, it's done. So company limited by guarantee. Mainly because of all the research shows us in social enterprise sector over the years, they are the most commonly used legal form for social enterprises from all the different sectors and bodies. They are the cheapest and easiest to set up. They are the cheapest and easiest to administer and to look after. They are the cheapest and easiest to hack the articles of. So in terms of putting in your preferred governance, the way you want the money to flow, your social objects, you can basically mirror everything in a KIC in a company limited by guarantee. You just can't call it a KIC. And it's the easiest to make changes to in the future. It's the easiest to change into something else in the future as well. So that's my kind of, if I'm pushed, you definitely something that's the kind of the one you go with as an emergency fallback. But like I say, never set it up until you absolutely definitely know you need it, because once you've set it up, you're paying for it, you're looking after it, you're bound by its rules. And until you know that's the best thing for you in terms of your business model, your customers, your growth plans, you might be wasting your time and losing energy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. The final thing then is just any top 3 tips that you'd give to people that are confused about their legal structures.
Okay, top 3 tips. Okay, number 1, question everything. I have had far too many clients I've met up with them, started working with them, and they say, oh, we're a charity, we're a KIC, we're an LLP, and I said, okay, why that legal form? Why is that the best for you? Oh, because we had an advisor, we had a funded program who said no, how do you know that's the best for you? Well, the consultant, the business advisor seem to know what they're talking about. Well, is it their name on the form? No. Then they're not responsible for it. You are. And then I kind of go through and we say, well, this is how this legal form is helping or hindering you. Yeah. And in one instance, I had a client, and I blogged about this, and got their permission, I've anonymized them, and basically saying this legal form they adopted was killing their business, and they didn't realize it. And they were trading illegally, and there was no way they could pursue the growth strategies, no way they could have the working relationships with staff that they wanted, because they hadn't realized they got it wrong. So any advice you're offered about your business, and this I think goes not just for legal forms, but for everything, question it. Okay? It's your business, it's your enterprise, you're responsible for it. You're the person who people will look to and say, yeah, it's all down to you that it succeeded, or aren't you a numpty because it crashed and burned? Make sure you understand what you're doing. If you don't like the advice you're being given, if the person can't explain it to you why it's the best thing, then you're wasting your time. In years gone by, when we had Business Link, and this would be a sign of people's age, whoever you're sitting with while you're watching this, ask them, do you remember Business Link? And if they say no, and they're very young. But I used to do a kind of a mystery shopping for Business Link operators around the country from time to time. And one of the first questions a Business Link advisor would ask me is, do you have a business plan? And I would always say, well, I have an idea. I have some approaches, and I use those, and they seem to work 13 years now. But I don't have a written up business plan. And the business link advisor would say, oh, you need a business plan. We can help you write one. And I'd always say, why? Why do I need one? And not once could any of them ever give me a good reason why I should waste time writing up a business plan and not going out, dancing in the rain, drinking in the pub, hanging out with my kids at the weekend. So if you don't know why it is, if they don't know why, then why are you listening to them? They obviously don't understand it. Okay, that's number 1. Question everything. Number 2, don't chase the money. There are lots of different flavors of money out there. There are lots of different rules. Social investment tax reliefs, very sexy. There are lots of stuff coming out there. Quasi equity, ooh, that sounds sexy. That's another good one. Debentures, loan stock, social impact bonds, all of which kind of you can do with some legal forms, but not others, and round it goes. If you set up your legal form to chase a particular type of money, what if you don't get that money? What if the rules around that money change in the future? Tax relief rules, so for example, the social investment tax relief rules are already changing within a couple of years of it being introduced. So don't chase the money, okay? In terms of your legal form, work out your business model. Money's one of those, the M on the CHAMP scheme, but there's lots of other things that are equally, if not more important, in terms of doing that. And the third thing, and this is probably about when you're actually incorporated, particularly on the governance you have, in the board you have, the steering group, the board, whatever you want to call it, these are the people who are leading the organization. These are the people who are responsible for it. pretty much 95%, 90%, 95% of all group social enterprises I work with, I look at them, we look at their accounts, the governance, what they're spending money on, and I ask them, why is there not a budget for board support? Why is there not a budget for support to your board to understand their role, to make sure they're doing the job properly, to keep up to date? Okay, we have national codes of governance for social enterprise. We have national occupational standards for the boards of social enterprise. Why aren't we investing in those people to make it right? One of the things that I do a lot with ventures is actually help them get their board into shape, get their board doing what they're supposed to do as a board. Whether that's a board of trustees, a board of directors, non-executive directors, executive directors, whatever it is, helping them understand what their role is and doing it properly and well for the good of the enterprise and the vision and the purpose for which it was set up. And my challenge is, my third thing is, if you find you've got people on the board who aren't right, they may be brilliant mates, you may have a great time when you go out down the pub at the weekend, they may know all the answers in the pub quiz, they may be the best forward on your five-side football team, but if they're not the right person, if they're not doing what they need to do on your board, find a way to shuffle them off, because it's only going to stifle it and kill it. Most of the failures in social enterprise that happens a lot in social enterprise, we just don't talk about it. It's all swept under the carpet. Most of the failures that I come across, when I hear about it, and I'll try and find the entrepreneurs involved, and I'll offer to buy them a drink and some commiserations, and because I'm weird like this, I ask why. What went wrong? I want to know. Tell me all your dirty secrets. I'll look after them for you. You can confess to me. I'll be your priest. And usually 9 times out of 10, it's because of governance. It's because something about the leadership and the board didn't work out. Yeah. So we need to challenge poor performance on our boards. And so, one of the things that I've developed over the years when I've done this stuff around legal forms is I've developed a framework that looks at these legal forms, the roles and responsibilities of boards, how they work against, for example, the KIC Code of Governance, how they work to national occupational standards for non-executive directors, how it all ties together, and saying, this is how you understand and take a quick benchmark. Are your board doing what they need to? Are they, not only do they have the skills, are there the structures and systems in place to allow them to use those? Because if there aren't, we can fix it, we can make it better. Otherwise, it's going to kill you and stop you. And one of the things I have done, and this is something which probably the first time I've confessed to doing this, on the record, I don't do it very often, but it does come up from time to time, is I get approached by chairs and chief executives who say, we have a bit of a problem with our board. There's 1 or 2 people on it, and they're great. They're great advocates for the organisation, they're really great to be with, but they're just not right for the board. How do we encourage them to move along so we can actually get it working better? And so far, my record of doing that is it's pretty much worked every time. And there's never been any blood on the carpet afterwards. Statistically speaking, it's all going to explode at some point soon, the next time I do it. But
yeah. So if I get invited out for a drink with you, I'll know it's because I'm being kicked off one of the boards I'm on, and you're having a polite tactic.
No, it's much more Derren Brown than a quiet drink and a tap on the shoulder. It's there's no horses' heads involved. There's no brown envelopes under door frames, nothing like that. It goes back to this idea that as a legal form, there are laws, there are governance, there are national guidance, there are standards. We need to understand if we're up to them or not, and we have a choice then. Do we want to get ourselves up to that standard or not? And there's no shame. I don't think there should be any shame attached saying we don't think that's right for us now. Now we understand it, it's not right for us. We think we should be somewhere else. No shame in that. In being honest and holding your hand up. Again, culturally, we're British. We don't like admitting that. We don't like saying, oh, we made a mistake. How do we fix it? I have kids. I say to them all the time, if you think you've got it wrong, hold your hand up. Yeah. Say it and we'll fix it. And that's actually, to me, much more important than getting it right the first time around. Mm-hmm. Try stuff out. Make mistakes. Learn from them and use them and work with them.
Yeah, brilliant. That's, I think, really, really helpful tips there. The next question would be about how do you go about recruiting these people for your boards, but I think that's a whole nother interview.
Blackmail and extortion.
Yeah.
That's where that stuff is.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Adrian, for joining me today and sharing your your expertise around legal structures and the confusions, and what people will be able to get in touch with you after the interview if they've got any other questions or anything they want to know further. So really, thank you very much for coming. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been entertaining, and as you can see, if anyone does get in touch with Adrian, you'll have an entertaining conversation as well. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye all.